This product is not sponsored or endorsed by Kazuki Takahashi, Konami, 4Kids Entertainment, Upper Deck Entertainment, or any other person or entity associated with any of the featured characters or game products. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a copyright and trademark of Kazuki Takahashi.
You too can become a master duelist just like I did with all 3 School of Duel videos. Learn Yu-Gi-Oh! New Duelist, learn Yu-Gi-Oh! Advanced Duelist, and learn Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duelist.
Your turn!
Welcome to the School of Duel. This is an unlicensed, unofficial, unauthorized video that demonstrates the art of dueling with Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. I am Professor Duel. This School of Duel Learn Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duelist video will demonstrate some of the more master techniques, rules, and concepts that you'll need to know when dueling at the tournament level. In this master video, you will learn about multi-trigger monsters, chains, the standby phase, deck construction concepts, deck construction for beatdown decks, and deck construction and playing techniques for the Forbidden One, the most powerful monster in the game, Exodia. There is a lot to know, so be sure to watch this master video a few times to make sure you get every last detail. And if there is something on the screen you want to study more carefully, such as card text or a field layout, go ahead and pause the video as often as you like. This is a master-level program, so you should already have a basic understanding of how to duel according to the rules. In order to get the most benefit, you should already know about monsters, spell and trap cards, dueling phases, and how to normal summon, flip summon, tribute summon, calculate battle damage, and activate and set normal spell and trap cards. You should also be familiar with more advanced concepts such as quick play spell cards, continuous spell cards, tune monsters, cost effect monsters, trigger effect monsters, continuous traps, replays, counter traps, ritual monsters, fusion monsters, monster tokens, spell speeds, and chains. If you are a new duelist and these concepts are not familiar to you, be sure to watch School of Duel Learn Yu-Gi-Oh! New Duelist and School of Duel Learn Yu-Gi-Oh! Advanced Duelist before watching the rest of this program. They're available wherever videos, cards, and toys are sold. For more information about School of Duel videos and DVDs, visit the official School of Duel website at www.schoolofduel.com. There you can find discussion boards on just about any dueling topic, articles, tips, news, and more. Ever heard of magic cards? In some card sets and in some countries, spell cards used to be referred to as magic cards. If you have magic cards in your deck, all the rules and concepts relating to spell cards apply equally to magic cards. Throughout this program, you will see references to specific cards and how to use them. In the coming years, new cards will be introduced, and individual card rulings may change. As a result, some cards will become less important or useful. So please keep in mind that it is the concepts that I present here that are most important rather than the individual card names. For the official rules about dueling, consult the rule book that comes with a starter deck. Now, join me in my study as I'm visited by someone I haven't seen in a long time. one of my best students here at the School of Duel.
Hi, I'm sorry it's been so long, Professor Duel. No, too weak. Hey, Professor Duel! No, too casual. I'm back! No, definitely not. If only I hadn't stopped my training so long ago. If only I listened to the professor and...
Ethan, with these cards the way they are, this seems like a great time to teach you about multi-trigger effect monsters, which are something that every master duelist must know. Do you think you're ready to learn this lesson?
Yes, Professor Duel.
Okay, let's review where we are. You have a monster in face-up defense position and a card face down in the spell and trap card zone. And I have a card face down in the spell and trap card zone and an injection fairy lily in face-up attack position.
Right, it's your turn.
I will draw a card and enter my main phase 1, where I'll summon Spear Dragon. This monster is pretty interesting because when it attacks a monster in defense position, it does damage equal to the difference between its 1900 ATK and your monster's DEF. Now I enter my battle phase, and my Spear Dragon attacks your Spear Dragon.
Ouch, that's not good for me. It's my Spear Dragon with 0 defense points.
That is the risk of using a monster that can't defend itself.
Professor, isn't there another effect of Spear Dragon?
Why, yes, Ethan. The effect of Spear Dragon says it has to go to the defense position after it attacks.
You are about to be in the same situation that I was in.
Yes, very good observation, Ethan. Still in my battle phase, I attack your life points directly with Injection Fairy Lily. Do you wish to continue?
No thanks.
I'm now in the damage step of my battle phase. Since you did not activate your face-down spell or trap card yet, I know you aren't going to activate a card like Mirror Force, Wabaku, or Magic Cylinder.
How did you know that?
Because those cards would have to be activated during the battle step.
Oh.
Seeing that you have no defense on the field, I will activate Injection Fairy Lily's effect, which says that I can pay 2,000 life points during the damage step to boost its ATK by 3,000. So I do that and attack you with 3,400 ATK. Do you wish to continue?
Yes, I do. I discard Creeper from my hand to activate its effect.
Wow, that was an excellent move. Karibo is a multi-trigger effect monster. This means you can use its effect even on your opponent's turn. And Karibo's effect blocks damage to your life points from one monster's attack.
Yep.
Since I can choose to activate her effect on either my or your turn, Injection Fairy Lily is also a multi-trigger effect monster. As you showed, Karibo is a great defense against Injection Fairy Lily. Other than boosting your monster's ATK or DEF after being attacked, Karibo is currently the only way to counter Injection Fairy Lily once you enter the damage step of a battle phase.
I knew that.
Did you also know that you did a doubly good job with this? Now that I have less than 2,000 life points left, I can't use Injection Fairy Lily's effect anymore. So I have a monster in attack position with only 400 ATK, along with a defense position monster with 0 DEF.
Not a very good defense,
No, not very good at all. Ethan, you have such a good understanding of all the rules, you're definitely on your way to becoming a master duelist.
Ethan, dice is on go.
Just remember, we're not done. Even though you have mastered the rules, it's still important that you never stop learning. Don't forget to focus on strategy. Strategy will help you think ahead of your opponents and win lots of duels.
I can defeat anyone.
Is someone there?
Professor Duel, is that you?
I see who it is, but I can't believe my eyes. Is that my long-lost apprentice, Ethan?
Yeah, it's me, Ethan. Is that you, Professor Duel? Where are you?
Well, at the moment, I'm climbing to the top of Mount Fuji in Japan. You know me and my adventures.
Yeah.
It's so nice to see you again, Ethan.
I should have come by sooner, Professor.
It's okay, Ethan. There will always be a place for you here.
Thanks, Professor. I've been wanting to talk to you about Yu-Gi-Oh!
I expected that you might.
Thanks to your training, I understand all the rules, but I'm still losing a lot of duels. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
Knowing the rules is only part of mastering the game. It's not enough to know the rules if you do not understand strategy.
Strategy?
We've been here before. Strategy is more than just knowing how to do something. It's understanding why and when to do something. Strategy will allow you to see into the future ahead of your opponents and plan your moves accordingly.
That sounds hard, Professor, but I'm willing to work hard again and learn. That is, if you're willing to teach me.
I'm always up for teaching one of my favorite students, but you have missed so much. We'll have to work fast to cover everything. Let's start by watching lessons I have given to some of my other students. Hello, Alex. Are you ready for today's lesson?
I'm always up for a challenge, Professor Duel. I'm most excited about learning strategy. I want to conquer the dueling universe, you know?
The dueling universe, huh? What do you say we start by conquering chains and standby phases first?
Sounds like a good strategy, Professor.
You have Mystical Space Typhoon face down in the spell and trap card zone, and I have Gemini Elf in face-up attack position, Axe of Despair equipped to Gemini Elf, and a card face down on the spell and trap card zone. It is your turn.
I draw a card. In my main phase 1, I activate Mystical Space Typhoon and destroy your face down card in your spell and trap card zone. Do you wish to continue?
Most certainly. I activate Imperial Order in response and chain to your Mystical Space Typhoon. Do you wish to continue?
No.
Okay then. We resolve the chain from the top down, so my Imperial Order negates the activation and effect of spell cards. Your Mystical Space Typhoon is negated, and its effect doesn't go through. So my Imperial Order is safe. Plus, now that I have Imperial Order on the field, neither of us can activate any spell cards, which means that you can't use that change of heart in your hand which you are about to play.
I will just end my turn.
I draw. Then, in my standby phase, I choose not to pay for Imperial Order, so it gets destroyed and goes to the graveyard.
What do you mean? Can you just choose not to pay the cost?
Yes, let me explain. The standby phase happens every turn right after the draw phase. Some continuous spell and trap cards have an effect that occurs in the standby phase. When the action on the card is a cost like 700 life points for Imperial Order, a duelist may elect not to pay it, and then the card is destroyed. Also, quick play spell and trap cards may be activated during this phase.
I see. So because you are not going to pay the 700 life point cost during the standby phase, your Imperial Order goes to the graveyard.
Exactly. In my battle phase, my Gemini Elf attacks your life points directly. Do you have anything to defend yourself with?
No.
The attack goes through, and the duel is over. Good game.
That's one crazy trap card, Professor.
I think so too. Let me make a few more comments about spell speeds and chains. Spell speeds tell us which cards can be used in response to other cards. Spell speed 1 cards cannot be used to counter any spell speed 1, 2, or 3 cards. Spell speed 2 cards can be used to counter spell speed 1 cards or other spell speed 2 cards, but not spell speed 3 cards. Spell speed 3 cards can be used to counter any spell speed cards 1, 2, or 3. Back on the first turn, you played Mystical Space Typhoon on my face-down spell or trap card. In many cases, this would have been a very good move. If that face-down card were a different card like Magic Jammer, 7 Tools of the Bandit, or Mirror Force, your Mystical Space Typhoon would have destroyed that card. In the case of Magic Jammer, it would not have been worth the cost effect. 7 Tools is a counter trap card that can only be activated in response to another trap card, and Mirror Force can only be activated in response to an attack. But since it was Imperial Order, Mystical Space Typhoon was negated. Also, you couldn't play your Change of Heart because Imperial Order is a continuous trap card and stayed on the field. But let's look at what would have happened if you had played Change of Heart first. I would have activated Imperial Order. Then you would have activated Mystical Space Typhoon. In this case, your Mystical Space Typhoon would destroy my Imperial Order, thereby allowing your Change of Heart to go through, and you would have won the duel. In summary, depending on which card I had face down, playing the right card first, or maybe the right card last, could win you the duel. This is where strategy comes into play.
Thanks, Professor Duel. These spell speeds and chains are the best discovery I've made yet.
Well, it certainly beats the discovery of your peanut butter and earthworm sandwich that you love so much. Now go off and conquer the dueling universe.
Oh, I see. Standby phase is important when you have a spell card, trap card, or effect monster whose effect specifies an action during that phase.
Exactly. Not too tough. Just remember that you must do your standby phase before you start to do your main phase 1 actions, like summoning or setting monsters.
Got it.
Now, about those advanced chains.
Yeah, I remember. Chains can sometimes seem confusing, but if you work your way backwards and resolve the chain by looking at spell speeds, you can figure out every chain situation.
Still clever as ever. It seems that you might need to look at some of the strategies that others have learned by reviewing their master lessons.
Professor Duel! You just gotta help me.
Please, sir, put me down at once. I'm starting to get nauseous.
Sorry about that. It's just, I've been going crazy with all these cards all around my house, and my daughter still says her deck isn't good enough. I just don't know how to help her.
What cards does she have?
She has 5 Monster Reborn, 3 Genzos, maybe 3 or 4 Summon Skull, a few dragons with blue eyes, and let me check.
My word. Does she keep all her cards in that? Some of them look bent and out of shape. She should take care of those cards. She'll want some of these cards in her deck and some to put away for her collection.
Well, this whole thing is her deck. And
wait, that's her deck? There must be at least 300 cards there.
342 to be exact. She just tosses the box of cards in the air and starts picking them up. That's how she shuffles them.
My dear sir, maybe it's time that I teach you about basic deck construction.
Oh, I can do that. I can usually build a tower, about so high.
No. Let me explain. A deck shouldn't be too big, but a deck must have at least 40 cards, not counting the cards in your fusion deck or side deck. Most good duelists try to keep it around that 40-card mark. If you have too many, you will usually not draw the cards you need at the time that you need them.
40? That's easy. She's got 40 cards.
No, Matthew, it doesn't quite work out that way. A good rule to go by is to have a 1-to-1 ratio of monster cards to spell and trap cards. So, in a 40-card deck, you'd have about 20 monsters and about 20 spells and traps. Unless you have a theme with a very complex strategy, keeping to this ratio will probably help you. Otherwise, with too few monsters, you'll have little to attack or defend with, and with too few spell and trap cards, you'll be easily overpowered and manipulated by your opponent's spell and trap cards, or high-powered monsters. And speaking of monsters, don't include too many tribute monsters.
Wow, Professor, this is great stuff. I mean, great stuff.
Now, every duelist knows that you can have at most 3 of any one card. But not everyone knows that you can only have 1 or 2 of some special cards.
Yeah? Why?
Some cards are just too powerful and are restricted to just 1 per deck, and those cards are called limited. Other cards are restricted to 2 per deck, and they are called semi-limited. And you should know that the limits include your side deck, too.
Well, how do I learn about which cards are limited and which ones are semi-limited?
The most up-to-date information is available on the internet. Check the official Yu-Gi-Oh website where you can find a complete list of limited and semi-limited cards there. Or you can visit schoolofduel.com where you will find a link that will take you directly to the official page. You should check the list regularly because cards are added or removed from this list from time to time.
Will do, Professor. So, tell me, what's that side deck thing you mentioned?
In addition to your regular deck, you can have a separate pile of exactly 15 cards called a side deck.
So, what is that for?
Well, when you build your playing deck, you are going to fill it with cards that help to support a strategy or playing style. You'll be expecting certain kinds of attacks from your opponent, right?
I guess so.
Well, you can put cards in your side deck that will help you defend against opponents whose decks are different than what you had expected. In between duels of a match, you can switch cards between your playing deck and your side deck in order to tune your deck to best compete against your opponent's deck.
Well, that sounds great.
It is. Just keep in mind that if you have a side deck, you must always have 15 cards in it. So that means that if you put a card from your side deck into your playing deck, you have to move one card from your playing deck into your side deck. You can't draw or use the cards from your side deck during a duel.
So, if I have 3 of a particular card in my deck, can I have a 4th or 5th in my side deck?
No. You can have a total of at most 3 of any one card in your playing deck plus your side deck. And as I said before, if a card is limited or semi-limited, then you can only have 1 or 2 of those cards combined among both your playing deck and your side deck.
Got it. Okay, what else?
When constructing your deck, make sure most or all of your cards complement each other and that there aren't any cards there just because you like them. Lots of my younger duelists like to put the newest, most powerful cards in their decks without having any cards to support them.
Well, what do you mean support?
Well, take this Gravity Bind card, for example. Gravity Bind prevents any monster with 4 or more stars from attacking, and you'd usually activate it to stop your opponent from attacking you.
That makes sense.
Now, if you had lots of 4 and 5-star monsters in your deck, Gravity Bind would prevent you from attacking too. You should instead add some cards to support Gravity Bind, like some strong 3-star monsters and some equip cards to boost up their ATK to the strength of a 4 or 5-star monster.
Can you give me an example?
Sure, I'll give you 2. Sonic Duck is a 3-star, 1700 ATK monster that is perfect for a Gravity Bind deck. And Jinzo number 7 would be a great card to add to your deck to support Gravity Bind. Jinzo number 7 can attack your opponent's life points directly. But be sure to equip your monster with spell cards like Malevolent Nuzzler, Axe of Despair, or United We Stand. An equipped Jinzo number 7 could continue to attack while Gravity Bind is activated and inflict damage to your opponent's life points directly. And the boost that your equip card adds gives Jinzo number 7 some major power.
I see. Just because a card is good or shiny doesn't mean it belongs in your deck.
Right. And the more different types of strategies you have in your deck, the less effective each of them will be, so stay focused.
That makes sense. The different strategies might work against each other.
Exactly. Now take a look at this card and read its effect.
Jinzu. With no number, huh? My daughter has one of these cards. It negates all of the trap cards while it's face up. What about it?
If she had a Jinzo in her deck, how might she modify her deck to support it?
Well, for starters, she should probably not load up her deck with trap cards if she wanted to disable them with Jinzo.
Good thinking. If your strategy depended on lots of trap cards, you'd be stuck for as long as you had Jinzo face up on the field.
That makes a lot of sense, Professor. What next?
Some people may tell you that they have their favorite card, but these staple cards are solid cards which can help out just about any deck. First, let's talk about cards that help you draw more cards. Activate Pot of Greed and draw an additional 2 cards from your deck. Pot of Greed is a powerful spell card which will help you get to all your other staple and support cards more quickly.
So you're saying greed is good? Well, I'm sure having those two cards in my hand will give me more choices for what to do next.
Right. For the same reason, Graceful Charity is a staple card too. It allows you to draw 3 cards from the top of your deck.
3 cards? That's even better than Pot of Greed.
Could be, but you also have to discard 2 cards to the graveyard. But the point here is that you can look at 3 new cards, combine them with your hand, and decide which 2 are the least helpful for your current situation.
So staple cards help me draw more cards, right?
Not all of them. There are lots of different types of staple cards. Some staple cards help clear the field. Regeki destroys all of your opponent's monsters on the field. When your opponent has several monsters ready to attack on his next turn, or you're about to attack and want to clear your opponent's field, use Regeki to destroy them all and give yourself an advantage.
Would that Dark Hole card also be a staple, even though it destroys your own monster too?
Yes, definitely. You can only have 1 Regeki in your deck, so Dark Hole is a good alternative, especially when you have no monsters of your own on the field.
Are there any other staple cards that destroy a bunch of my opponent's monsters, but leave mine alone?
Mirror Force is a trap card you can activate only when your opponent attacks. Its effect is that it destroys all of your opponent's monsters that are in attack position. This can quickly wipe out a group of attacking monsters while protecting your own monsters on the field.
Are there cards that destroy an opponent's spell and trap cards as quickly as these cards destroy monsters?
Yes, there are. Heavy Storm destroys all of the spell and trap cards on the field. It's a great card to activate right before an attack to help ensure that your opponent won't counter your attack with Mirror Force or some other trap or spell card. But be careful because it destroys all of your spell and trap cards on the field too. An even better destruction card is Harpy's Feather Duster. It works just like Heavy Storm, except that it does not destroy your spell and trap cards.
That sounds great, Professor. I'll be sure and tell her about all of these.
You may as well also tell her about Mystical Space Typhoon, which destroys 1 spell or trap card on either side of the field. It's an extremely useful card because it's a quick play spell card. That means you can play it from your hand during any phase of your turn, or if you set it on the field, you can activate it during your opponent's turn.
Those cards all sound like they'll really help out my daughter's deck, Professor. What happens if some of her monsters end up in the graveyard? Are they gone for the rest of the duel? What about that Reborn the Monster card I found earlier?
You mean Monster Reborn, and yes, it's a staple card. It allows you to move a monster from your or your opponent's graveyard to your monster card zone in face-up, attack, or defense position.
Wow! So right after I destroy my opponent's monsters with Regeki or Dark Hole, I can put one of those destroyed monsters back on my side of the field and attack with it during my next battle phase, right?
Exactly. And Premature Burial has a similar effect, but it brings monsters only out of your own graveyard and has a cost of 800 life points.
I have a question for you. My daughter always seems to end up with a tribute monster in her hand that she can't summon because her own monsters keep getting destroyed. Is there a staple card that she could have in her deck that would help?
Remember what I said about tribute monsters? You should limit your deck to only 1 or 2. But if you do have one that you're having trouble summoning, you can use Monster Reborn and Premature Burial for that too. You can revive a monster and then tribute that monster to bring out your own level 5 or 6 monster. You can also use Snatch Steal or Change of Heart.
Change of what?
Change of Heart. With this spell card, you can gain control of one of your opponent's monsters until the end of your turn. You can use that monster to attack your opponent, or even use it to bring out your own tribute monster. Change of Heart is definitely a card which can quickly turn the tide of battle if it's used wisely.
And I'm guessing that if I use the selected monster as a tribute, it doesn't go back to my opponent's side of the field at the end of my turn. It goes to the graveyard when I tribute it, right?
Exactly. Snatch Steal can work for you in much the same way. Snatch Steal is an equipped spell card that also allows you to take control of your opponent's monster. The effect of that card is that your opponent gains 1,000 life points during each of his or her standby phases, so long as your Snatch Steal is equipped to his or her monster. Unlike Change of Heart, whose effect lasts for only one turn, Snatch Steal's effect remains until either Snatch Steal or the monster is destroyed.
And can I use the Snatch monster to tribute one of my own tribute monsters?
Yes, definitely. Do that, and you've successfully increased your own ATK at the same time that you've destroyed one of your opponent's monsters. Can you see why all these cards are so important to have in your deck?
Yes, I sure can, Professor Duel. Altogether, they can really help me control my own destiny in a duel.
Indeed they do, my friend. Here's another important concept for your daughter to know. Whenever possible, use cards with effects that disable or destroy more than one of your opponent's threats at once. For example, you could use a dust tornado to destroy one of your opponent's spell or trap cards, but you'd be using one of your own cards to destroy only one of your opponent's cards. It would be better for you to use a card like Harpy's Feather Duster to destroy all of your opponent's spell and trap cards at once. I call that card economy, when one card can eliminate many of your opponent's cards. And that makes Harpy's Feather Duster a better all-around card than Dust Tornado.
She doesn't have that Feather Duster card. She doesn't even clean her room. Can she use something else instead?
Well, you could use Heavy Storm. Just be careful with it, because you'll lose your card economy advantage if you are destroying too many of your own cards.
Oh, I get it now. Let me see if I understand this card economy idea. What you're saying is that the effect of a Regeki, which will destroy all of my opponent's monster cards on the field, gives me more card economy than using Fissure, which only destroys one of my opponent's monsters. And Regeki is even better than Dark Hole because Dark Hole also destroys my own monsters, right?
Right. But if you activate Dark Hole during your main Phase 1 before you summon any monsters, when you summon a monster, you will have an instant monster advantage. Its incredible power keeps it in the staple card list. Now, go share this new knowledge with your daughter.
Gee, thanks, Professor. I know my daughter will appreciate all your help. I'll be back.
Even after all this time dueling, I still keep my deck small. Around 40 cards. I try to stick to the 1-to-1 ratio, one trap or spell card for every monster card in my deck.
That's good, Ethan. These are not hard and fast rules, but guidelines. And if you develop a unique style to your own deck, some of these guidelines may not even apply. Just like people, every deck is different and reflects a person's deck construction and dueling style. But it takes some study and practice before a duelist is ready to move very far from these guidelines.
Are there some deck designs that are more effective than others?
Yes, there are quite a few. So many I can't describe them all. But among the more popular are beatdown decks, which try to win the duel by attacking your opponent with strong and efficient monsters, often equipped with strong equip cards. Then there is a burner deck, which does its best to inflict direct damage rather than battle damage to win the duel. A depletion deck tries to win the duel by causing your opponent to run out of cards to draw, otherwise known as decking out. And there is one more that every duelist has heard of.
You must be talking about the forbidden one.
That's right, Ethan. Exodia. This deck causes an automatic win as soon as you have all 5 pieces of Exodia in your hand. But it's not as easy as it sounds.
Wow, I sure would like to see all these decks at work.
In time, my young friend. Not all deck designs fit every duelist style of play.
Which deck designs do you think would fit me, Professor?
I can think of 2 deck designs that you would probably enjoy, Beatdown and Exodia.
Those are the ones that I would have picked too.
And after I put this card down defense position, I shall end my turn.
I'll draw. I enter my main Phase 1 and tribute summon Summoned Skull. In my battle phase, I attack your defense position monster with my Summoned Skull. Emily, what's wrong?
Nothing, Professor Duel. I appreciate your helping me with my training, but it just doesn't seem like I can win with this deck.
Well, Emily, what kind of deck do you want to have?
I want to win with style. Yes, that's it. Well-dressed monsters with high ATK.
Well, I don't know about well-dressed, but I can certainly help you build a deck to beat your opponents without too much fuss. We call decks that try to overpower your opponent with high ATK beatdown decks.
Oh, that sounds absolutely ghastly. I'm not sure I could duel with such a deck among my friends.
I assure you, Emily, you'll do just fine. In fact, we'll give your deck a bit of a warrior theme, too. You could choose lots of themes once you see how certain types of cards work well to support each other.
Beatdown and warriors? It all sounds so boyish. But I trust you, Professor Duel.
To build a beatdown deck, you need to first include most or all of the staple cards. Then we'll decide which monsters will most efficiently defeat your opponent. We'll look at some spell and trap cards that will support your strategy. And we'll be sure to keep in mind your own dueling style, too.
That sounds grand, Professor. I have a bunch of cards here in my purse.
Don't bother. I'll show you what you need. First, let's add those staple cards we've already talked about. In a beatdown deck, you'll want to have these cards. Pot of Greed and Graceful Charity each allow you to draw extra cards from your deck. Dark Hole, Regeki, and Mirror Force help to destroy lots of monsters at once. Monster Reborn and Premature Burial each allow you to bring cards back from the graveyard to the field. And to eliminate your opponent's spell and trap cards, you've just got to include Heavy Storm and Harpy's Feather Duster. You may as well include a Mystical Space Typhoon or two as well. Those quick-play spell cards can be very handy.
Those are some powerful spell and trap cards, Professor. I should have thought to include those in my deck long ago. But what about monsters? Lots of high-powered monsters like Blue Eyes, White Dragon, right?
Glad you asked, but no. Because you want the ability to play a monster on a given turn, you'll want to limit the number of tribute monsters. Jinzo would be a perfect choice for your deck. Jinzo is a level 6, 2400 ATK monster whose effect is to negate the effect and activation of all trap cards.
That's quite impressive, Professor, to say the least.
You should also add some high-powered non-tribute monsters. Goblin Attack Force is a 4-star 2300 ATK monster. This card does have a side effect, however. It is switched to defense position after attacking until the end of the second term after it attacks. That makes it very good trap bait. With this monster in defense position, your opponent may try to attack, only to find your Mirror Force waiting for him. And if you've got a marauding captain, your Goblin Attack Force will be protected.
Marauding Captain? That sounds so barbaric.
Perhaps, but necessary. Marauding Captain prevents your opponent from attacking any other warrior-type monsters, and Goblin Attack Force is a warrior. Marauding Captain also allows you to special summon one non-tribute monster to the field when he is normal summoned.
What if I special summon another Marauding Captain?
Good question, Emily. I'm very proud of you. If you had two Marauding Captains on the field, because of their effect, they prohibit your opponent from attacking these two cards. Once they are on the field, they cannot be defeated in a battle. However, they are still vulnerable to spell and trap cards and affect monsters. Can you see how helpful those Marauding Captains will be?
Yes, they are exquisite.
Now here's a card that I think you'll like quite a bit. These young ladies are Gemini Elf, a 1900 ATK monster.
With an ATK that high, it most certainly is a tribute monster.
Actually, Emily, it's a level 4 monster and requires no tribute. That's why it is such a great card for your deck. There are many 1700 and 1800 point monsters to be found, but very few with this much power and no side effects.
And they're so elegantly dressed, too.
I thought you'd like that.
Are you sure there's no cards like Teacup Fairies? Or a spell card like Let's Be Friends?
How about Injection Fairy Lily?
Fairies and flowers? Yay. That's one of my favorite cards. Even though it has low ATK, I know all about how I can pay 2,000 life points to increase its ATK by 3,000 during the damage step of a battle.
Were you listening in when I was talking to young Ethan some years ago?
Eavesdrop? Me? Never. But I would be all ears to hear about some more monsters for my deck.
I'd recommend Exiled Force. Its effect is that it can be tributed to destroy one of your opponent's monsters.
Oh. It destroys monsters without attacking. Like Maneater Bug.
Yes, but much better. Actually, Exiled Force has a big advantage over Maneater Bug. Maneater Bug has to be set before it can be flipped, but Exiled Force can be summoned and tributed to destroy a monster during the same turn.
Oh, look, it's a warrior-type monster. I remember. Yes, that charming marauding captain. If both Exiled Force and marauding captain are on the field at the same time, marauding captain will protect him till I want to use his effect, right?
Excellent work. Excellent.
And if I normal summon marauding captain, I could actually special summon Exiled Force, then use Exiled Force's effect to destroy one of my opponent's monsters.
I'm so proud of you, Emily. You really seem to understand all of this. Remember, you should always be on the lookout for cards that work well together, like these warrior monsters do. Here's another example of using two cards that work well together. Ring of Destruction allows you to destroy one face-up monster card and inflict direct damage equal to the monster's ATK to both you and your opponent.
A card that damages me? I know that's not the proper thing to put in my deck.
Perhaps, but in cases where you have no other monster cards on the field, you might as well take the damage if they were going to attack you directly anyway. But you can use this card with another card and make a combo.
Combo?
As we've been discussing, a combo is any collection of cards, usually 2 and sometimes 3 or more, that work together in a way that produces a desired effect, just like Exiled Force and Marauding Captain.
I get it. It's all about cards supporting each other. That sounds right. What supports Ring of Destruction, then?
Lots of cards actually support Ring of Destruction. Look for cards that deal with direct damage in some way by stopping it or even redirecting it. Barrel Behind the Door's effect is to take direct damage aimed at you and turn it toward your opponent. By activating it after Ring of Destruction, your opponent loses a monster and receives double the damage.
Oh, that's too bad for him, but excellent for me. What else do I need in my deck?
Well, since we started talking about spell cards for your beatdown deck, let's continue. When you're thinking about which spell cards are needed for a beatdown deck or for any deck, think about your theme and your strategy. A beatdown deck is all about overpowering your opponent. For instance, you should use Nobleman of Crossout when dealing with an opponent who likes to use effect monsters.
Yeah, a couple of Maneater Bugs could really hurt my precious monsters.
Nobleman of Crossout sends any face-down monster to the graveyard without flipping it. And if it is a flip effect monster, Nobleman removes any cards from both decks that are exactly like it. Both you and your opponents have to show each other your decks to ensure that all of the targeted monsters are removed.
That sounds fair.
For example, if you happen to target a Magician of Faith with the Nobleman of Crossout, not only does your opponent remove all his Magician of Faith from the deck, but
I would have to remove all my Magician of Faith as well? Looks like I will have to be careful when I use this.
since you don't use a lot of flip effect monsters in a beatdown deck, you'll have little to worry about. Also, Tribe Infecting Virus will be a good card to put in your deck. It's a fairly weak monster, but it has a very strong effect. You can discard one card from your hand and send a monster type to the graveyard.
A monster type?
Right, not just a monster. As with Nobleman of Crossout, you've got to destroy a single monster. Tribe Infecting Virus can destroy several monsters if they are the same type. And since it stays on the field,
I can use Tribe Infecting Virus effect again and again? Oh, this is truly outstanding.
be careful, however, since the card removes all of one type of monster from both sides of the field. Think carefully before you use it, and read all your cards carefully as well to make sure you're sending none of your own monsters to the graveyard.
You sure have given me a lot of advice, Professor Duel. I nearly have my whole deck together. Just a couple more cards here and a few more there. I should have an unbeatable deck.
That's right, Emily, but first look at cards that help with your theme. We have focused a bit on a warrior theme, but we could just as easily have built a deck with a spellcaster theme, a dragon theme, a gravekeeper theme, or countless others.
I'll do that, Professor. And then I'll just have to make a deck cozy for my killer beatdown deck.
You do that, Emily. You do that.
There's a lot of planning to build a strong deck. I mean, I don't have a beatdown deck like Emily, but the same concepts apply for most decks.
That's right. Like I said before, always read the description of the cards carefully. Support the strength of your deck and cover the weaknesses. Solid deck building skills will always win out in the end.
Yeah, you're right. I should go back through my deck and see where it can be improved. Who knows? One day it might be as good as Ryan, this year's Duelist champion.
I know you will. I've taught Ryan this year's School of Duel champion, and I can honestly say...
You taught the Duelist champion?
Please put me down. I don't know why everyone feels the need to pick me up and shake me around. For your information, I was about to say Ryan wasn't much different than you. Why, this reminds me of one of my lessons with him. Ryan? Oh, Ryan, could I speak with you for a moment?
Yeah, just a moment. I've just about solved the equation for turning pudding into gold. Was it gold in the pudding?
This is a bit more important than desserts. I want to talk to you about dueling. I hear that you want to leave the School of Duel.
Well, sort of. I appreciate everything that you've done for me, Professor Duel. It's just that...
Yes, Ryan?
Well, it's hard to find people who challenge me anymore. I've beaten everyone here, except you, Professor Duel, but you're always out on an adventure around the world.
Could you speak up a little bit, Ryan? These Madagascar lemurs are trying to take my hat.
I'm just saying that I need a new challenge in dueling.
I think I know what you need. You could use a good challenge, like this.
I've never seen cards like this before, Professor. They don't seem very powerful. How will they help me?
These are the pieces of Exodia. Separate, they are weak monster cards, but together they have the special power of winning the game.
Winning the game? Like it has a high ATK?
Not like that at all. As you know, Ryan, there is more than one way to win the duel. Everyone knows that the first way to win is to reduce your opponent's life points down to 0. The second way occurs when your opponent runs out of cards and is unable to draw when he has to. There is another way, a special way.
Really?
Yes. By collecting the pieces of Exodia in your hand, you instantly win the game.
That sounds too easy. Why haven't I heard of this before?
Because it's not easy to do. Actually, it's very difficult. As you see, the 5 pieces of Exodia each represent a piece of the monster. The left and right arms, the left and right legs, and finally the body. Separately, these cards are weak and would hinder any deck. If some of the pieces are in your graveyard, or even just your deck, a victory cannot be declared. You must have all 5 pieces of Exodia in your hand to win.
This is highly illogical. Improbable.
Yes, Ryan. This is one of the toughest ways to win. The strategy behind an Exodia deck lies in using cards in your deck that increase your chances of getting the 5 pieces of Exodia in your hand. It's all about strategy, planning, and increasing your odds of getting the cards you need.
That sounds very technical. I love it.
As you know, the minimum requirement for any deck is 40 cards. For an Exodia deck, it is essential that you keep your deck at the minimum 40 cards. The higher the number of cards in your deck, the harder it becomes to reach the pieces of Exodia. Also, you should never just throw the pieces of Exodia in an existing deck in hopes of randomly assembling the pieces in your hand. You must design a deck and a strategy around the idea of assembling the Exodia in your hand.
Sort of like the way you would design a beatdown deck behind the idea of using high ATK to constantly attack your opponent?
Exactly. Now, I'll let you design the deck.
What, me? But I need to do research, read a few more books, go to schoolofduel.com for some inside tips.
It's all right, Ryan. Everything you need is here. Just tell me what would be the first things to think about when designing an Exodia deck. And remember, theme of the deck is to get the pieces of Exodia in your hand, not to attack your opponent's life points.
Good point. Well, I guess if I want to focus on getting the pieces of Exodia in my hand, I should find cards that help put more cards in my hand.
Like these?
That's amazing, Professor. And these were some of the cards I was thinking about.
Right. As you know, Pot of Greed is a staple to nearly every deck. Graceful Charity does nearly the same thing by allowing you to draw 3 cards, but requires you to discard 2 cards from your hand. Upstart Goblin is a good card because you can draw an extra card and only pay the cost of 1,000 extra life points to your opponent.
Give life points to my opponent? But I'll never win that way.
But this isn't about life points. This is about Exodia. Your opponent could have 100,000 life points, and with Exodia in your hand, you'll still win. Sangan and the Witch of the Black Forest both have effects that help you search through your deck for pieces of Exodia, since each piece has a low ATK and DEF.
Right. They act as a small defense against attacks, but I get their effect when they go to the graveyard. That's a 2-for-1 deal.
Good thinking. Not only is it important to assemble the pieces of Exodia, but you need to protect your life points until you're finished. Since you need to keep your deck small to focus more on assembling the pieces, you can use cards like Dark Hole to wipe out all the monsters on the field. Also cards like Swords of Revealing Light, Gravity Bind, and Messenger of Peace will help you stall your opponent's monsters from attacking you.
Like the cards I use in my stall deck. By using cards that stop my opponent from attacking for a couple rounds, I have more time to get my Exodia pieces.
Not only do you need to slow down your opponent, you need to speed up the rate you move through your deck. The quicker you can get through all the cards in your deck, the quicker you can assemble Exodia. Painful Choice is a great card for any Exodia deck. Once activated, Painful Choice allows you to search for 5 cards in your deck and show them to your opponent. Your opponent will pick one of the cards to go in your hand, and the others will go to the graveyard.
I lose 4 cards to the graveyard, and my opponent gets to see one of the cards in my hand? That doesn't sound very smart.
Well, normally you're right. Losing 4 good cards from your deck can hurt your chances to win. But this isn't an ordinary deck. Going through your deck as quickly as possible will help you find the pieces quicker.
Just be careful not to put any of your Exodia pieces in the graveyard, right?
Actually, no. It's true that you can only win with all parts of Exodia in your hand, but if 1, 2, or 3 of them happen to go to the graveyard, Backup Soldier will help you bring them back from the graveyard into your hand. Backup Soldier is a trap card you can activate once there are 5 or more monsters in the graveyard to retrieve 3 non-effect monsters back into your hand.
Wait, isn't the head of Exodia an effect monster?
Correct. You'll have to find another way to retrieve the head of Exodia from the graveyard if it is destroyed. But it's not easy. Monster Reborn can bring the head back to the field, but it's very likely it will be destroyed again and end up back in the graveyard.
So how do I get it back into my hand?
That's why you'll want a Penguin Soldier or a Hain in your hand. Hain can send any monster on the field back to its owner's hand, and Penguin Soldier can send up to 2 monsters back to their respective owner's hand. You'll need to look into other monsters who can provide defense as you're collecting the pieces of Exodia. Sinister Serpent is a weak defending card, but its special effect brings the card back to your hand during your next standby phase after it goes to the graveyard.
It seems to me that I could also discard Sinister Serpent if I needed to pay a discard cost of some sort, like with Graceful Charity or Magic Jammer. Once it's in the graveyard, Sinister Serpent would still bounce back to my hand during the next standby phase, right?
That's right, Ryan.
I've noticed that some of these cards are restricted.
Some of the cards that you have, like Pot of Greed, Swords of Revealing Light, and Sangan, are restricted to 1 card per deck. Even the pieces of Exodia are restricted so that you can only have 1 of each piece in your deck. There is a way around this, however. Cards like Magician of Faith have the ability of retrieving spell cards from your graveyard so that you can use them again. Magician of Faith has the flip effect of returning one of your spell cards from the graveyard and into your hand. Use this with other restricted spell cards like Pot of Greed and Swords of Revealing Light, and it will be like you have two of them in your deck.
Well, this is great, Professor. I'm sure with my new Exodia deck, no one will be able to beat me. What is this, Professor?
This is what I call trouble for an Exodia deck. If your opponent knows you are running an Exodia deck, he or she may use some of these cards to make it very hard for you. Cards that make you discard from your hand or deck straight into your graveyard are a problem when you're trying to keep all the pieces of Exodia in your hand. Exchange is a spell card that requires you and your opponent to look at each other's hand and then select from it one card to add to your own hand.
Youch.
Also, cards like Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer can be damaging to you. Kaiku has two effects. First, if it inflicts damage to your life points during an attack, your opponent can remove up to 2 of your monster cards from play. Second, so long as it is face up, you may not remove cards from play. Soul Release is also harmful to an Exodia deck because it allows your opponent to remove up to 5 monster cards from your graveyard from play.
Remove from play? Where do they go?
The cards are set aside in a separate pile away from the game mat and other decks, but keep an eye on them. There are ways to bring them back into the game. If pieces of Exodia are removed from play, there are only a few cards which can bring them back. Miracle Dig can pull the lost pieces back into play, but only if you have at least 5 total monsters already removed from play. You should add cards like Wabaku and Gravity Bind to help provide a defense. A couple of fake trap cards will go a long way in stopping other cards like Mystical Space Typhoon and Harpy's Feather Duster from destroying any of your own trap cards.
Whoa. Exodia sounds like a powerful card combination, and it makes for a powerful deck. But it sure is a lot of information to download. But I think I can remember. All I need to do is ask myself what I want in a deck, and I'll find an answer in researching the cards.
That's right, Ryan. You're one of my brightest pupils. I'm sure one day you could win a tournament, or 2, or 12.
Thanks, Professor Duel. It's not the winning that's important. It's the challenge of the game.
And don't forget, even if you don't have Exodia, being able to control the cards in your hand is very important.
I bet it would have been a really good duelist by now if I hadn't stopped training.
It takes a great master to realize that there is always more to learn. The game is always changing, and it's not possible to learn something once and be done. You've always been an excellent duelist, Ethan, and now you're on your way to becoming a great master.
Thanks, Professor Duel. Professor Duel?
Yes, Ethan?
Do you think we have time for a duel?
I thought you'd never ask.
Special thanks to Ghostmasters, the best and most authoritative Yu-Gi-Oh! Magazines. Pick one up wherever magazines are sold.